with the event, I request everyone to ensure that their phones are either on airplane mode or in silent mode to avoid interrupting the flow of the event. I request you to please limit your appreciation to applause only. Kindly refrain from hooting or shouting. The audience is requested to maintain the decorum of the auditorium. Kindly rise as the guest enters the auditorium. I apologize. Please settle down for a minute. Please maintain silence in the auditorium. Kindly rise as the guest enters the auditorium. Thank you. Kindly be seated. Education and learning are the cornerstones of personal growth and societal progress. DAKSH is an annual education and career guidance fair hosted by the Student Council, Christ, deemed to be university. It focuses on the various opportunities made available to pre-university, undergraduate, and postgraduate students. DAKSH is here to guide students to acquire knowledge and make informed choices regarding their higher education and careers. Through active participation in the stalls, dialogues with eminent speakers from various disciplines, as well as personalized career counseling sessions, students will be able to learn about various vocations and fields of study that they could pursue. On that note, I welcome you to DAKSH 2024, the annual flagship event of Christ deemed to be university. I, Akanksha Singh, will be your MC for the day. To be an activist is to speak. To be an advocate is to listen, and society cannot move forward without both. Please join me in welcoming our guest for this session, Dr. Rajdeep Manwani. We would also like to welcome our faculty coordinator for this career talk, Dr. Naveen Kumar, for giving a token of thanks for your presence today. Our gift hamper is sponsored by Bistro Claytopia, India's first concept cafe. Bistro Claytopia is the melting pot of people from various cultures who share a common passion of blending art with food. At Bistro, they strive to give the best possible experience to all our customers. They are committed to quality, value, and your complete satisfaction. Dr. Rajdeep Manwani, an accomplished academician and speaker, heads academic research at Sindhi College. With triple post-graduation and a PhD in commerce, his accolades include national awards for disability empowerment. A distinguished Toastmaster and TEDx speaker, he mentors youth, delivers corporate speeches, champions disability inclusion, and conducts workshops. Passionate about education quality, he is a prolific researcher, having trained 21,500 plus students and executives in the past 22 years, embodying the motto, touching lives, making a difference. I request our speaker for the day, Dr. Rajdeep Manwani, to please come up on stage and enlighten us.
Thank you, Akanksha, for that wonderful introduction. When I was invited for this talk, I asked one of the student coordinators of your SGC, how are the students here at Christ? And she told me, really intelligent. And when she told me that, it reminded me of a small incident which happened. There was a teacher who went into class. And when he went into class, there was this boy sitting in the front row. He asked the boy, if God appeared in front of you, what will you ask God for? So the boy smiled at the teacher and said, sir, definitely I'll ask for the latest iPhone Pro Max. Definitely I'm going to ask for a new laptop. Definitely I'll ask for a 350cc bike. So the teacher got a little irritated. He said, what's wrong with you? If God appears in front of you, you should be asking for wisdom. You should be asking for courage. You should be asking for talent. The boy smiled at the teacher and said, sir, you ask what you don't have, I'll ask what I don't have. So I feel I'm in the same situation like that. No, yeah. If you're clapping, clap properly. Don't do this half-hearted business. Yeah, clap, 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 clap. Yeah. Good. Learn that. That's the first lesson for entrepreneurship. Okay. Whenever you do something, do it wholeheartedly. Don't do it half-heartedly. Okay. Coming to the talk, so as I was given the topic, key drivers for increasing your entrepreneurial quotient. There were two studies which were conducted. One was a study which was a little earlier in life, which was in the 1960s, conducted by a very famous researcher called David McClelland. Some of you all are doing your BCom and you should know that there were different theories of motivation. Remember you studied in your 12th standard, in your degree, all that Maslow's theory and all that, right? And one of the theories of motivation was given by a person called David McClelland, where he spoke about three needs: need for achievement, need for power, and need for affiliation. And he did a lot of research, and he identified 8 competencies for entrepreneurship. Okay? Let's leave it there. There was a recent study which was conducted somewhere in the 1990s and the 2000s. It was conducted by one of the most premier institutes of entrepreneurship in the world. Even today, if you type in the net, entrepreneurship, best institute, you'll get a result which will flash on Google. The first result will be the Arthur C. Blank Institute of Entrepreneurship. It's in the Babson College at Boston, Texas. And they did a study across 5 continents, and they surveyed some of the greatest entrepreneurs, whether it was Michael Dell, whether it was Steve Jobs, and they identified 13 competencies to become a great entrepreneur. What I did was, I went through the 8 competencies and the 13 competencies, and I have identified that there were 3 competencies which were common to both those studies. So what I'm going to do over the next 35-40 minutes whatever time I have, I'll speak about those three very, very interesting competencies which are common to both those studies, which are the drivers for you to become entrepreneurs, and then we'll open it up for questions if there are any questions. Is that okay with you all? Yes or no? Good, you all are listening. Okay, let's start off with the first competency. So I'm not going to tell you the competency straight away. I'll tell you a small incident which happened when I was in my 10th standard, and then we'll move on. See, when I was in my 10th standard, it was an ICSE school, and we had a 6 subject, okay? You have the normal 5 subjects, your languages and your social studies, science and maths. And we had the 6 subject which I had taken up as commerce in my 10th. And as a part of the 6th subject, we had to go for an industrial visit. This was okay, I won't tell you the year. If I tell you the year, you'll guess my age, so it's a little dangerous. But in that, somewhere in the early 90s, late 80s, okay? And we were to go to an industrial undertaking which was in Hosur. All of you have heard of Hosur? Yes? Yeah, okay, Hosur. So we had gone to Hosur, and in 1987, just around 3 years or 2 years back, there was an industry which had been set up there, which was a joint venture between the Tata Industries and Tamil Nadu Finance Corporation. It started in 1987. Anybody wants to shout out the name of the company? Wonderful, very good. So it was Titan, which had started over there. So we went there, and it was very interesting. They took us around the entire sections, and they made us see how the watches are made. And after the entire section we were being taken around, there was one room. Over there, it was written, "We are in 2008. Okay, outside the room. Now remember, this is around 1990, it's around 1988, 1990, around that time. And it said, "We are in 2008. So we are a little puzzled. So we were around 20, 30 boys, and we asked the person who was taking us around, "How come it's written we are in 2008? So he said, no, sir, let's go inside and speak." We asked, "Which department is this? It doesn't seem like the marketing." They said, "No, sir, this is the strategic planning department." And we went inside, and over there we met a person who later on went on to become the CEO of Titan, and now he's the brand custodian of the entire Tata brand. His name is Harish Bhatt. If you get a chance, listen to his videos on YouTube. Brilliant speaker. And we asked him, "Sir, what is this? We are only 1988 and you're saying we are in 2008. How come?" He asked us, "Which watches are you all wearing?" So we said, "HMT. You all remember a brand called HMT? Any of you all know about it? Hindustan Machine. It was a government enterprise. And he said, "What does HMT say? What's the tagline?" And the tagline of HMT was, "We are the timekeepers of the nation." So we said, "Fantastic." He said, "Why do you all wear this watch?" We said, "To see the time, naturally." He said, "When we come here and we started thinking of what watches we are going to make at Titan, we don't think of watches made in 1988. We are thinking of what the watches will be in 2008. Then we asked him, "Sir, what will be the watches in 2008? He said, "Watches will no longer be timekeeping instruments. Watches will become gifting ideas. Watches will become status symbols. Watches will become fashion accessories. And now at Titan, we are making watches which are fashion accessories, which are gifting ideas, which are status symbols." 20 years later, in 2008, HMT closed down. You know, it closed down a few years back. And Titan captured nearly 80% of the market share. When we had visited in 1988, HMT had nearly 85% of the market share. Titan had nothing. But there was one difference. And you know, Titan launched their gifting ideas, Bandhan, Titan Bandhan. They launched their status symbol watches, Titan Raga. They launched their Titan fashion accessories, Fast Track, and all those watches, right? What was the difference between Titan and HMT? The difference was one thing. Titan had a goal. They had a plan. And the first competency of a great entrepreneur, which is mentioned in both the studies which we went through, which I went through, was the goal. Every single entrepreneur worth his salt has a definite goal, has a definite plan, has a definite idea. Remember when you were small, you wanted to burn a paper without using a matchstick. How did you all burn it? Without using a matchstick? Anybody tried this? Yes? You take a magnifying glass and you put the paper, and what do? You focus the magnifying glass and you focus the rays of the sun on that particular paper, and after a few minutes the paper burns. I remember trying out this experiment when I was in my 6th. I lost my eyesight in my 8th standard, so this was before that. This was around in the 7th standard or something like that. So what happened is, I was holding the magnifying glass. Our physics teacher had taken us out and she was teaching us lenses, and whatever happened, the paper never used to burn. And I used to ask my teacher, why is it happening like this? She told, okay, I'll come with you and I'll show you. When she came with me, she saw that, Rajdeep, I know now why the paper isn't burning. I said, why, ma'am? She said, your hands shake. If your hands shake, there is no fixation on a particular point. And if there's no fixation on a particular point, will the paper burn? Even if you go to the hottest desert in the world, if you go to the Sahara Desert and if you put that paper on the sand, and if your magnifying glass is held with your hand shaking, nothing will happen. But even if you go on a cool winter morning in Bangalore, where the sun's rays are not so direct, but if your hands are fixed, if your goal is fixed, even within a period of at least 2 or 3 minutes, the paper will start burning. The difference is the goal. And all great entrepreneurs have this goal in their mind. All of you all have heard about Dhirubhai Ambani, yes or no? One of the greatest entrepreneurs India has ever witnessed. You should know his story. So Dhirubhai Ambani started off as a petrol attendant in Aden, in Yemen. And when he came back to India, he started a small spice business. You all might be knowing this. He started a spice business. Now look at the story a little. Let's fast forward a bit. And he said that the better scope which I have in my business is not only through spices, but the apparel business. So he started selling cut-piece cloths from one house to the other. And he got his first loan from Syndicate Bank. Now it's merged with Canara Bank. But suddenly he got an idea. He took an appointment in 1963 or 64 with the then chairman of ICICI. Now you should all remember that ICICI wasn't a retail bank as it is now. All of you have heard of ICICI? Yes? It was actually established in 1955 with the help of the World Bank, and it was called the Industrial Credit Investment Corporation of India. And it was a financial bank. It used to lend only to large industrial institutions, etc. Now it's become a retail bank in 1992, I think, so it converted. But in those days, it wasn't that. And Dhirubhai Ambani went up and he took an appointment with the then chairman of ICICI, whose name was Mr. Wagul. And as soon as he went to Mr. Wagul, he asked him a question. He told him, Mr. Wagul, I want to ask you this question. I want a loan of 5 crores. Mr. Wagul said, is it? Yeah. But what are the security you're going to provide me? Correct? So Dhirubhai Ambani threw down the papers of his house, where he had his small godown, where he had stored all his apparels and garments, etc. And then he said, is that all? He said, no, I also have a warehouse. And he threw down those documents. And Mr. Wagul started laughing. He said, if I add up the total value of your house, your stock, and your warehouse, it comes to around 80 lakhs. And you're asking a loan for 5 crores. What are you going to do with this money? Immediately, Dhirubhai Ambani pulled out a paper from his pocket and he started reading. He said, sir, now it's 1966. I'm only selling retail and only selling cut-piece cloth. But I will start my industry and I'll start manufacturing cloth, and by 1970, I will have a huge output of textile cloth. By 1974, I want to give it a brand name and I'm going to call it Vimal. By 1978, I'm not only going to make cloth, but I'm also going to make the raw material for the cloth for polyester, that's polyvinyl chloride. And by 1986, I'm going to start a petrochemical factory which will supply the raw material for this polyvinyl chloride. So, sir, I'll assure you, by the end of the next 20 years, I'll be a leader in whatever I do. Mr. Vagul was surprised. This man is asking for a loan of 5 crores in 1966, but he had a vision, a goal for the next 20 years. Right from what he wanted to start as a polyvinyl chloride company to his petrochemical plant. And Mr. Vagul turned at the back of the document paper and he said, no security, but a great dream, great goal, great vision, loan sanctioned. And the rest, as they say, is history. And you might be surprised to know that whatever Dhirubhai Ambani had a vision for the next 20 years turned out to be true with only a difference of, let's say, 5 months or 6 months here and there. All because he had that great vision. He had that great goal. And every single entrepreneur has that vision of what he wants to achieve. Dhirubhai Ambani went from 0 to 60,000 crores. And that's what is that entrepreneurial competency which all these great leaders are talking about. So what I'm trying to tell you is very simple. The first competency of a great entrepreneur is a goal, a vision. All of you all have heard of Ray Kroc. Who's Ray Kroc? The founder of McDonald's. When he was cutting the ribbon for his 100th outlet, one of the press reporters came and asked him, Mr. Ray Kroc, you're successful now, but when were you successful for the first time? And without even batting an eyelid, Ray Kroc said, when I was lying unemployed in the benches of California Park. And the press reporter was a little puzzled and she said, what's wrong with you, sir? How would you be successful when you were lying unemployed in the benches of California Park? And immediately Ray Kroc said, at that time I had a vision. I had a goal that I'm going to start one of the largest fast food outlets in the world. And the feeling was so great that time that when I'm now cutting the 100th outlet, I feel the same energy and the same happiness like I'm doing today. And Ray Kroc has given 2 very famous quotes. One of them was, you live twice, once in your imagination and once in real life. And he also gave another very important quote, which all of you all might have read so many times. You don't stop dreaming when you become old. You become old when you stop dreaming. Because Ray Kroc started the first outlet of McDonald's at the age of 54 by acquiring the business of 2 brothers, Mac and Donald. All of you all who are in quiz will know about this, right? So just remember that the first essential competency of a great entrepreneur is his goal. Let's go to the second one. There's a very famous quote which I want you to learn and put this in your head for the rest of your life. You can get in life whatever you want if you help enough other people get what they want. Put this in your head. You can get in life whatever you want if you help enough other people get what they want. This is not my quote. This is one of the most famous quotes given by a very famous American called Zig Ziglar. And why did Zig Ziglar give this quote? Because the second essential competency of an entrepreneur is finding a gap, filling up the need of somebody who has an unsatisfied want. Let me tell you a story. In the early 2000s, there was this boy who was doing his mechanical engineering in Leeds in UK. Okay, and when he was doing this, he was supposed to do a social project. So he said, I'm not going to do it in the UK, I'll go to the southern part of Africa and I'll do it. I'll do it in those tribal areas of Mozambique. I'll do it in the Kenyan regions, etc. So he said, okay, he went backpacking and he went to Kenya and he went to Mozambique. And once he visited the tribal areas of these places in Mozambique and Kenya, he found that the tribals, they just loved their music. They loved dancing to music, they loved playing their drums, etc. But they didn't have any source of entertainment. There was electricity, there was no electricity in those areas. Even if the electricity supply was there in some of the backward tribal areas, most of the electricity was there only for 1 or 2 hours a day. There were good radio stations and they loved listening to music over there, but the batteries which they used, the cells which they used in their transistors and radios, they generally lasted only for 3 or 4 hours because they used to continuously play it. And as I told you, since there was no electricity, what used to happen? They couldn't have rechargeable batteries, and that actually in those days it was in a very nascent stage, all these lithium-ion batteries, etc. So what this Trevor Bayliss did was, how can I help these people? They love listening to music. They love going around and playing their music and listening to radio. Can I do something for them? Because they don't have electricity, their cells are running out. How can I make them feel happy listening to music? The next day, as Trevor Bayliss, the boy whom I'm talking about, got up, a watch fell from his bag, which he had bought from London, from Leeds. And this was not his watch. This was a watch which had been gifted to him by his grandfather. Any of you all know the difference between the watches used today, the quartz watches, and the watches which were used around 30, 40 years back? Anybody remembers? You want to try? Just shout out. I'm feeling that I'm speaking to nobody. I can't see, so I don't know. Are you all listening? Yes or no? Good. What were the watches which were used in the earlier years? Any difference between the watches used today and the watches which were used around 30 years back? They were all wind-up watches, you know, with a spring, Have you seen those toys which you run with those keys? You put the key and then the toy starts moving up and down. If you ask your grandparents, they will tell you the earlier watches were those which the spring, you know, you wind up the watch. And I laughed because my watch is a quartz watch, but there is another invention to this also. I'll tell you that later. There's something very strange about my watch. Okay, so you wind up the watch. I'll tell you the story and then I'll tell you about my watch. Okay, and they used to wind up this watch, and then it used to last for 24 hours. The spring used to unwind, and when the spring used to unwind, the watch used to tick, and then after 24 hours, you again wind up the watch. There were no batteries. And some idea struck Trevor Bayliss. He said, wow, I've got my solution. He went back to London and he started working on springs, where you could wind up the watch with the spring, and as the spring is releasing itself, the potential energy gets converted into electrical energy. And he worked for the next 6 months with his group of friends, and he came up with the first wind-up radio. Not only the first wind-up radio, the first wind-up electric emergency light, because I told you there was no electricity. So these Africans are very well built. So you have to wind it up with carbon and steel. He used to make the springs. They wind it up, and as it's unwinding, the radio can play for around half an hour or 40 minutes. But they don't have to spend any money on batteries. He called his company Free Energy. Free Energy was sold to Philips in 2008, I think so, for $4 billion. What did he do? Did he do something for himself, or he tried to find a need of somebody? He tried to find a need. All great companies don't start with the essential need to make profit, whether it's Flipkart, whether it's Swiggy, whether it's any company. All great entrepreneurs try and focus on what is that need of the society which we can fill. And if they can fill that need of society, that is what makes a great entrepreneur. Zomato is not profitable even till date. But they filled a need. Why should people go to a restaurant to eat something? Why can't they get something and eat it at home? Correct? Have you heard of Redbus? Redbus was not started with the need to make profit. Here only, from boys in RV engineering, Charan, Padmaraju and friends. All of them started because they said, bus travel is such an irritating experience. You go to the bus stop and then you have to wait for the ticket. You don't know which seat you'll get. You don't know whether it's comfortable or not. And they did a survey and they said, why don't we allow people to book bus tickets and choose their seat, choose their amount of travel, and Red Bus is now very, very popular. So every single entrepreneurship venture is not started with the view of making profit, but it starts with a great urgency to fill a need. That's why, didn't I tell you? You can get in life whatever you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And keep this in mind. Students, tomorrow when you start your own venture, might be you all will become chartered accountants, might be you all will become business venture capitalists or whatever. If you concentrate on what the customers want, if you concentrate on what need you can fill about those people who are coming to you, you'll find that your business will take off. But if you start with, I'm going to make 1 crore, I'm going to make 2 crores, be sure that you'll meet with a lot of disappointment. It's a guaranteed rule of life. So just keep this in mind. In fact, I'll tell you one more story, and this will, an Indian story, and you'll come to, let me tell you about something. I'd gone around 2 months back to IIM Bangalore. Okay, and they have this PGPM section, postgraduate management section, and I was speaking to the students there. They have around 8 sections of around 75 students in the first year, and 8 sections around 1,200 students. So I was asking them, how's your day, and just speaking to the IIM students casually before I gave my talk, and I was asking them, is there any new entrepreneurial venture which you all have started in IIM Bangalore? Okay, and one of the girls told me, sir, we started something. I said, what did you all start? She said, sir, there is this great need for the IIM students to take Xerox copies. Because you know what happens is, most of the time, we have to study till late and we don't have a single book to refer. There is limited knowledge even on the net, even ChatGPT is there, but even then we need some books, we need previous references, so we have to go to the library, take Xerox copies. And most of the times if we have to take Xerox copy, we have to take around 50 to 100 a day. So the cost comes to 50, 100 rupees a day and comes to nearly 2,000, 3,000 rupees a month. So we said, how do we reduce the cost of Xerox copying? How do we reduce the cost of photocopying? Okay? Xerox is a generic name, right? But how do we reduce the cost of photocopying? And we were thinking of what do we do? The basic need of people is, you know, we'll reduce the quality of paper, we'll make the dye a little cheaper so you'll have those kerosene smell coming from your Xerox copies. Haven't you seen all that, right? But we said, no, that can't be done. How much can we do? We'll make it 60 paisa, 50 paisa, and that's not going to work. Then we sat around and we said, what need can we fill of the people who come to our campus? Because if you go to an IIM campus, you have hundreds of recruiters. You should know that once you join IIM, the recruiter who comes on the first day pays the highest premium to get the best talent. And he says thousands of companies want to come to IIM to talk about their products, to talk about their services, because we are the management cream of the nation. So we thought of something different. We went to different corporates and we asked them, are you willing to give your advertisements to all the students in IIM? They said, definitely. But the advertisements won't be done normally. What the advertisements will be done is, when we are taking the photocopy, one side is blank. On the other side of the photocopy, you can put your advertisement. So for 100 advertisements, we'll charge you so much. And they started this venture called Fokat Copy. Fokat in Hindi means free. And that venture is doing great. It's not only now in IIM Bangalore, it's in IIM Ahmedabad, it's in IIM Indore, it's an IIM Lucknow, Shillong. All of them, they have spread to Fokat Copy, where they get the first 10 copies of their Xerox free. After that, they pay only 10 paisa. Why? They thought of an idea to fill the gap. The need of the students was to get the Xerox copies at a cheaper rate, and now the Xerox copies are available with an advertisement at the back part, but the blank part is not wasted. They've got something else. So remember this, the second essential competency of a great entrepreneurial venture is, okay, he's telling me, you please shut up, you're talking too much. Okay. Yeah, okay. So it's called gap. Okay. So it's called gap. That was the second one. Now let's come to the third and the last essential element of a entrepreneurial competency. I promised you all three, right? So I told you all two. What was the first one? Goals. Yes? What was the second one? Gap. Good. Let's go to the third and the last one, which is called grit. What is grit? Some of you all should listen to a TED talk given by a very famous lady who's written a book called Grit. Her name is Angela Duckworth Lewis. When passion combines with persistence, it is called grit. Okay? So basically, when you're doing something with passion and you're not willing to give it up and persist with that venture for a long period of time, it is called as grit. So what I'm trying to tell you is, all great entrepreneurs have grit. Now, since I have 5 minutes, I have to condense one very interesting story for you all in the next 5 minutes, but I'll do that. Okay. Now, have you heard of a radio broadcasting service called BBC? BBC stands for the British Broadcasting Corporation, just like we have AIR in India, right? The All India Radio. So BBC in 2000 released a documentary series which was called The Men of the Century. Basically, they profiled around 40 to 50 people who had made a big impact from 1900 to 2000. We had Mahatma Gandhi, we had Albert Einstein, and among them there was only one entrepreneur. And this entrepreneur was from Japan. His name was Suchiro Honda, right? And I was a little curious. Why didn't they profile Jamshedji Tata, or why didn't they profile JRD Tata, or why didn't they profile GRD Birla? Why did they have to profile only Suchiro Honda in the Men of the Century? There were so many other great entrepreneurs, right? So I did a little research and I tried to find out the story of Suchiro Honda. Now listen to the story in the next 5 minutes before I open it up for Q&A. I think so. My time is running out. 1 minute. Okay, it's 10:44. My God. Okay, good. Teachers are like that only. When you start talking, you don't remember. And I didn't open my watch. I was telling you, there's something good about my watch. My watch actually opens and I can touch it and I can see the dial. Okay, so I didn't see that. Okay, let's come to the point. Now, Suchiro Honda, let me tell you the story. Suchiro Honda was the son of a blacksmith in Tokyo, and he had this great dream, very poor fellow, but he had this great dream that I have to supply piston rings to Toyota. Toyota was one of the largest manufacturer of automobiles in the 1920s and 1930s. This is the 1920s, 1930s. But how do I do that? So he took up an engineering course, and he went to engineering college. He pledged the jewelry of his mother, and he went over there. And he learnt engineering in the mechanical and the metal engineering space for 2 years. After 2 years, what happened was, he said, I've learnt enough. So he came out of he left his engineering course. He set up a small shed and he started making these piston rings. Piston rings are necessary, all of you all who know a little bit of automobiles. Nowadays, piston rings are made of steel, but in those days, piston rings were made of aluminum, okay? It's an essential part of any car, any bike. So what happened was, he started making that. He made around 1,000 of them, and he went and met the purchase manager of Toyota. He said, see, you're buying your piston rings for 30 yen a piece. I will supply it to you for 25 yen a piece. Will you buy it from me? The purchase manager said, come tomorrow. I'll tell you whether the piston rings are good or not. When he came back the next day, the purchase manager said, how much are you selling it for me? He said, 25 yen. You know what the purchase manager did? He took the piston rings and he threw it down on the ground and he said, this is not even worth 1 yen. All the piston rings are defective. One diameter is 10 centimeters, one diameter is 9 centimeters. You're completely hopeless. I'm not going to take any of them. Suchiro Honda was very disappointed. He went back, he cried. His mother told him, don't worry. Go back to your engineering course, complete the course, and once you complete the course, only then you will understand how to make a proper piston ring. So he went back again to his college, and now all his classmates were teasing him. Oh, Mr. Piston Ring, you're back. And now his classmates had become his seniors because he had wasted 1 year. But he didn't bother. He completed his engineering course, again did the same thing, started his own shed, supplied those 1,000 piston rings again to Toyota. And this time Toyota accepted it. They said, wonderful, these rings are good. So he started becoming a supplier to Toyota by supplying piston rings. Great. But how long will you work from a shed? So he wanted to construct his own building. And you know what? The government of Japan banned the sale of concrete. They said no concrete are sold because we are constructing our own buildings. Did Suchiro Honda give up? This is grit, okay? Listen to this entire story. It's a story of grit, of one of the greatest entrepreneurs, the men of the century of BBC. And they refused to sell him cement and concrete. But did he give up? No. He started his own cement making plant, his own concrete making plant. He said, if they don't supply, it doesn't stop me from making concrete. And he constructed his own building. And you know what happened? After constructing the building and manufacturing piston rings, his building was flattened 3 times in the next 5 years by earthquakes. You know, Japan is an earthquake-prone area. Recently also there was an earthquake there, right? 3 times in the next 5 years, his building was flattened. And every time it was flattened, he actually constructed it back again. And then something ridiculous happened. The Second World War broke out in 1939. And the government banned the sale of aluminium, which is the raw material needed for these piston rings. They banned the sale of aluminium. Now he doesn't have any aluminium. He has 20, 30 workers who are lying idle at his factory. One day he was listening to the radio and one of the announcements came that the American troops are bombing parts of Japan, but as they are bombing parts of Japan, they are throwing petrol cans to spread area. So once they bomb, the aluminum cans will also be thrown so that the fire spreads in the whole area. And Suchiro Honda started jumping. He said, wow. Everybody told him, are you mad? He said, they are throwing petrol cans and those petrol cans are made of aluminium. I will get those raw materials from there. He used to put his life to danger, go to the areas where bombing was taking place, picked up those aluminium cans and started working it for his factory. He used to say, Roosevelt is my best friend. He was the president of USA. He gives me raw materials free of cost. And he took those cans and he made it. But can you believe what happened after a year? One of the American bombers, they mistook his factory to be a hideout for the Japanese soldiers and they bombed his factory. Everything became zero again. He had nothing left. He said, I feel like crying because I have to rely again on my father's income as a blacksmith. And once he used to go to buy vegetables with his car, he used to say, it's so expensive to put gasoline and petrol in my car. And if I go by cycle, remember the hilly terrain in Japan is so much, it goes up and down. It used to be very tiring. So he thought of an idea. Why don't I put the motor of a car into a cycle so that the petrol consumption is less and start a motorized cycle? That gave birth to the first idea of a motorized cycle. But nobody was willing to give him money. He went to 2,300 cycle shed owners across Japan, asking them for money. Only 200 of them agreed. 1 out of 10 people rejected him. He collected the money, started his company called Honda Inc. and started making these motorized cycles. The first cycle batch of 1,000, motorized cycle batch of 1,000 cycles came out and he called them the Honda Lion because when they started it used to roar like a lion. But can you believe it? In the first year, only 2 cycles were sold. 2 cycles. All his shareholders came, they ransacked his house, took away his furniture, took away his everything in his house, and he was left with nothing again. He was a little puzzled. These cycles are good, they save petrol. Why aren't people buying? He went and asked the customers, why aren't you all buying my cycle? Japan, the people are a little small built. They said, your motorized idea is good, but when we sit on the cycle, we sit on the motorcycle, we feel like a rat is sitting on an elephant. It's too big. He said, oh wow, the problem is not with the product, it's with the design. He sat for the next 6 months, renovated those 998 cycles which were left, removed the excess part, made it into smaller parts called smaller motorized cycles, which he called the Honda Cub. The Cub is the smaller one of a Lion. And those 998 cycles sold within the next 1 week, and the rest, as they say, is history. Now look at the grit of this man. And now I was so happy that BBC had given him the Man of the Century because How many setbacks did he have? Rejected by Toyota, his own classmates calling him piston ring, his entire factory not getting concrete to be made. He's setting up his own concrete making plant. His factory being flattened 3 times by an earthquake. No aluminum for his factory, no raw materials. Going and putting his life into mortal danger by collecting those aluminum cans. His first getting rejected by every person to give him money to start his venture. His cycles not selling, his house getting ransacked. But all he did was persist. All he did was he had grit. And that's why Suchiro Honda, and Honda is now the second largest automobile manufacturing company in the world after Suzuki. All because this man never gave up. And once they had asked Suchiro Honda, what's the one message you want to give to the youth of Japan? And he had said, just remember one thing. Failure is an event, it is not a person. What? Failure is an event, it is not a... I want to end this talk because I'm really running out of time. My time has really traveled fast. Remember the 3 Gs. What were the 3 Gs? The goal, the gap, and the grit. If you keep these 3 in mind, these 3 are the key entrepreneurial competencies. So I had asked Anjali, how long do I have to speak? She said, sir, you speak for however long you want. The students will leave after 1 hour. So I have to end over here. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, sir. We greatly appreciate your insightful session. I'm confident that we've gained invaluable insights and extensive knowledge today. To our audience, please be informed that we are now opening the floor to questions.
Pass on the mic.
Good morning, Dr. Rajdeep. I'm Jeet from 4BCom Honors A. I would like to start by telling you that I really liked your 3 Gs and it's really inspiring. So my question to you is, what advice do you have for individuals who are looking to transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, and how can they successfully navigate this shift?
People who are looking to transfer from corporate to entrepreneurship, and how? What was the second part?
Yes, sir. How can they successfully navigate the shift?
Handle?
Navigate the shift.
Okay. I got your question. See, basically, it's all a mind shift. First of all, understand that when you're moving from a corporate life, you are completely, there are 2 things which you have to say. The stability which you get in a corporate career, because you're going to get your salary month after month, may not be the same in entrepreneurship. So first thing which I want you to do is secure the life of your near and dear ones and see that you're in a safe space before you go from corporate to entrepreneurship. There's no point jumping into entrepreneurship and putting your parents or siblings or children into difficulty, right? So if you're in a safe space because you've worked in a corporate for a long time, absolutely great. Once you've secured it, there are 2 mind adjustments you'll have to make. One, remember, in an entrepreneurial venture, there will be ups and downs, which I already told you. So you won't be guaranteed a salary every month. So you'll have to keep that in mind. It'll take a year or 2 for your business to settle down. Second thing which I would tell you to handle the shift would be that when you are working in a corporate, you had to take instructions from somebody. You could do what somebody else told you. But when you're an entrepreneur, you're independent. So you have to take decisions. You have to command, you have to delegate. So you will have to shift from a person who's taking orders to a person who's giving orders. And that might be a difficult phase in the beginning. So keep these 2 things in mind. One, the uncertainty of income, and the second is you will have to take up a leadership position where you will have to give orders because you're not in the safe cocoon of blaming it on somebody else, because everything will be on your own thing. Let me also tell you that in a corporate environment, for the first year, you'll work for 9 hours a day, 10 hours a day, it's okay. But especially in an entrepreneurship, at least for the first 2 or 3 years, you might have to work 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day, because there's a very famous saying in entrepreneurship: before you get on the business, you have to get in the business. So you'll have to be into the entrepreneurship venture for the first 2-3 years, where you'll have to sacrifice 15-16 hours of your day getting the entrepreneurship venture to work. After 2 or 3 years, when it settles down, you'll have your managers and you can only delegate. Then you'll be on the business. So you'll have to be in the business for the first 2-3 years, and then you'll be on the business after 2 or 3 years. So the starting is a little challenging, the middle is a little messy, but the end will always be beautiful. So take that plunge if you want to, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe we can take one last question.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
I'm Ayush, and I want to ask if you could elaborate on the question on entrepreneurship quotient, and why is it important in today's business landscape?
See, why I called it entrepreneurship quotient is that, now let's make it clear that, see, not all of us are born to become entrepreneurs, and it's not anything wrong about that, right? It's nothing wrong. If you like to work in a corporate environment, it's absolutely great. If you like to do things working under a structured atmosphere, it's absolutely nothing wrong. But if you want to know whether you're built for entrepreneurship, whether you have the passion, whether you want to take up that risk, whether you don't want to take instructions from somebody, you're an independent-minded person, it's absolutely great to take up entrepreneurship. So don't take it for granted that, oh my God, I have to become an entrepreneur. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. What I'm trying to tell you is, it is good to be an entrepreneur because, one, you're not a job seeker, you're a job provider. Imagine the satisfaction which you get when you start a venture and you have 100, 200 employees. You're feeding 100, 200 families. Won't that give you a lot of satisfaction? You're contributing to the economy in that way because now you're creating employment rather than just seeking for employment. So it is important in some way. It's the entrepreneurs who build the world. Every great business venture. And not only that, once you start an entrepreneurial venture, look at the great social foundations of the country. Infosys Foundation, it was an entrepreneurial venture, right? Wipro Foundation, Azim Premji University. All these were entrepreneurs who are giving back to the society much more than what they have. The Tata Foundation, Tata Cancer Hospitals, all of these people were entrepreneurs who have now started their own philanthropic ventures, who are doing so much to the world. So I think the most important thing is, when you become an entrepreneur, is the chance of you giving back to society increases manifold. That's why I was talking about entrepreneurial venture. That's what I was telling. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I request you to please remain on stage and please accept a token of appreciation for your inspirational and wise words. I request Dr. Naveen Kumar to please present our speaker with a memento. I now invite Sana Kamal to deliver the vote of thanks.
A very good morning to one and all present here. It is my honor to render the vote of thanks for today's august occasion. I would like to express my profound gratitude to our speaker, Dr. Rajdeep Manwani, for expounding the essence of entrepreneurship and sharing anecdotes from his experience. Thank you to everyone who contributed to the seamless operation of the event, including the faculty, management, and the volunteers. I would also like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to our audience for making this career talk a fruitful one. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
That brings us to the end of today's session. This is Akanksha signing off. We request the audience to please disperse in an orderly manner. Thank you.